Education is said to be the bedrock of any given society, but when millions of children are out of school, it becomes a problem. In Nigeria, more than 12 million children are said to have never seen the four walls of any classroom. And for better understanding, 1 out of 3 Nigerian children is considered out of school. The big question is, how did we get here and where are we headed? That is our focus this morning on The Policy with Leah. Please stay tuned. We begin the business of the day from the trends table.
Nigeria's gross domestic product (GDP) grew by 3.19% year-on-year in real terms in the second quarter of 2024. The National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) said the growth rate is higher than the 2.51% recorded in the second quarter of 2023 and higher than the first quarter of 2024 growth of 2.98%. The second quarter performance of the quarter in review was driven mainly by the services sector, which recorded a growth of 3.79% and contributed 58.76% to the aggregate GDP. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) says implementing stronger reforms will enable Nigeria achieve her projected 3.1% economic growth outlook for 2024. IMF resident representative Dr. Christian Ebike, while speaking at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry LCCI International Business Conference and Expo 2024, said that for the country to grow slightly from the 2.9% rate of 2023, further reforms on governance and business regulations were needed. Ebike said the country had recorded progress in its credit market as well as financial and external sectors, but the reforms would transform its growth momentum into something more durable. The Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) has increased the rates for the Standing Deposit Facility (SDF) to 25.75% as part of efforts to manage liquidity in the financial system, as contained in a circular signed by Dr. Omolara Duke, Director of Financial Markets Department of the bank. She explained that the decision was taken following the 296th Monetary Policy Committee meeting, where key adjustments to interest rate policies were approved. The Standing Lending Facility (SLF) rate, which banks use to borrow short-term funds from the CBN, has now been raised to 31.75%. The Pension Transitional Arrangement Directorate (PTAD) has directed unverified diaspora pensioners under the Defined Benefit Scheme (DBS) to renew their aliveness certificate from the Nigerian High Commission where they reside. These pensioners were suspended from the pension payroll as a result of being unverified and living in the diaspora. The new directive announced by the Directorate is a means of ascertaining their aliveness, since they cannot yet participate in the I Am Alive verification exercise for verified pensioners. PTAD directed that the diaspora pensioners must submit copies of their letter of first appointment, last promotion, acceptance of retirement, bank statement showing last pension received, and BVN slip with photograph to complaints@ptad.gov.ng. Other items include valid means of identification and I Am Alive certification from the Nigerian High Commission or notarized letter confirming aliveness. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, has addressed the House of Representatives Committee on Alternate Education, outlining government's financial strategies and programs aimed at tackling the pressing challenge of out-of-school children in Nigeria. Joined by the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, Mr. Edun reaffirmed federal government's commitment to strengthening education through a range of initiatives with a view to ensuring that every child is provided with access to quality education. Wale Edun also announced the upcoming relaunch of the Homegrown School Feeding Program, a critical initiative designed to increase school attendance by providing meals to students, and explained that feeding children at school would not only improve their health and well-being, but also incentivize them to remain in school.
So how did Nigeria end up with many children, millions of them, out of school, and what is their way out? Here's that policy conversation with Chioma Nwokedi-Momah. Officially, there are 18.3 million out-of-school children in Nigeria, according to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. But the federal government puts the figure much higher at 20 million and says it has returned about 4 million out-of-school children to the classrooms and aims to return that amount in the next 3 years. And of course, 12.1 million children are said to have never seen the four walls of a classroom. And this is primarily propelled by insecurity and rising poverty levels. Save the School International, on its part, estimates that 1 out of 3 children in Nigeria is out of school. So today we explore the out-of-school children concern and why they should get back to the classrooms. Chioma Nwokedi-Momah is the lead consultant at Lydia and Sam's Consults. She is a public policy lawyer and corporate strategist with over 15 years of experience in the public sector. She's an author and a parenting and family life advocate. This is just a little out of the so many things. It's nice to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me, Leah. It's good to be here.
When we say out-of-school children, who are they? What are the implications?
So out-of-school children, like just for you to understand how serious of an issue it is, these are children who do not go to school every day. They're not enrolled in any educational system. So that means they're either at home, walking the streets, being molested, or going through one thing or the other. And the implications for the system are manifold when you think of the fact that these are young children. Just to, throw more light, that figure of 18 million, 10 million are primary school age children. So between 5 to maybe 10, 11-year-olds, while I think 8 million are for those in secondary school. And like you said, the figure might be much higher. So when you think that this amount of children are on the streets, most likely, it has really rife implications for the society.
With this number of children out of school, is it a concern for just the parents or it's a societal concern for Nigeria?
It's a huge societal concern because when you think of what education does for any society, any country, it helps grow the GDP because you have more enlightened people who understand things and who are getting better jobs and who are able to give more to their society. But when you have people who are not in school, they're easily molested, they can get into the hands of, bandits, be used by all these political people who are looking for those to take advantage of and use on the streets. They can just get into all sorts of trouble. And it's a vicious cycle because it's caused by poverty, it's caused by insecurity, it's caused by child marriage. And those children who are not in school will fall subject to the same things: poverty, because they can't get better jobs, insecurity. And the cycle just continues. So the country loses a lot. When you have people who don't even understand simple things, who cannot read and write, what can you teach them? How can you help them? How can you say, okay, you know what? This policy has been made, you need to take advantage of it. They don't even understand that policy. They can't take grasp of it. They have so much suspicion. For example, trying to eradicate all these childhood diseases. People who are not educated don't understand what the immunization is about. They are suspicious, so they don't immunize their children. So that means you have poor health.
What will it take to get these children back to school?
Wow, that's a huge question. It will take a lot. It will take a lot. First of all, the first thing has to come from the very top. It always starts from the top. When we look at the budget for the last few years, when you think of how much has gone to education, it's never more than 6.3 or 6.8% of the total budget. And UNESCO has asked it should be between 15 to 26% at the very least. So when we think that we need to even pump a lot of money into that sector, then teachers at the public sector level, we don't have enough teachers. Why? Maybe they're not being well paid. We don't know. Maybe insecurity is part of the reason, but we need to make sure that even those who are there are trained better. Just recently, I was part of a program where they were training those in the FCT, giving them that basic level of training, which is important to keep them motivated, to keep them abreast of best practices, to keep them knowing that, look, we need to help impact these children. So there's a lot that needs to be done, but it starts from the very top. Also, civil society has their role to play, obviously, because we already have so many NGOs in that sector trying to do their part to help, especially in those areas that have the serious issues, in the Northeast, where there's a lot of insecurity or where there has been insecurity. So we have them trying to make sure that they help reach these children, help teach them, help fund their teachers, And even, just this morning, I was looking at this, young girl. I think she's somewhere in Plateau State. She has a little NGO, and she's reaching hundreds of children in Plateau State who have been out of school. I think they, maybe they're in IDP camps. She's finding new ways, innovative ways of reaching them. And that's what we need. We need innovation. We need to find how can we reach the unreached. Those who are not coming to school for whatever reason. Maybe I'm using radio systems, I'm using TV. A lot of them don't have to, but at least radio. Most people have radios. So you can say, okay, doing things via radio. Feeding programs, those are great ways that have been shown worldwide to help increase the number of children in school, because some children are so poor that if they know that they're going to be fed in school, that will encourage them to leave home and come to school. And their parents will be encouraged to say, okay, you know what, go to school, at least you're sure of one square meal in that school.
You talked about training teachers. And for a lot of us in the media, we've asked questions why, for instance, if you're looking at the JAMB placements, colleges of education get the least. Is that not a misnomer?
It truly is. It truly is, because their training is so important and impactful. And when you think of it now, a lot of people, they teach is almost like a last resort. Oh, I can't get a job, let me go and teach. Oh, I want to. So the passion has declined, because first of all, they know that if they go to their training colleges, they're going to come out and get very poor remuneration, which is not very encouraging. So a lot of emphasis has to be placed on training them properly, making them feel more prideful about this vocation that they have chosen, and ensuring that they get consistent round-the-clock training, upgrading their skill, upskilling their, what they have already. So it's very, very important that we correct all those anomalies in the system and make them feel like, look, we're not enough, or what we do is not important. Because the truth is, like, there's this motto, I think is NUT, motto, if you see someone that can write, it's a teacher. You see someone that can read, thank a teacher. Their job is so important. So we need to make sure they have that pride, and those colleges take their place in the society, where they know that, look, we are helping train people who are going to change the society. Think about it. Think about those in those in leadership now. Most of them went through the public school system. Who taught them? Most of them. So we need to make sure that they're getting the best at the public school system.
Another concern is the fact that in the public school system, you hardly find teachers with passion. And then, of course, the training and retraining you talked about, we don't get to see that in public schools. The public schools don't even get the funding, for instance, that you've outlined. And right now, with the constitutional shift, this is going to get back at the basic level now to the local governments and perhaps the state governments. What steps should be taken in that direction?
So first of all, like I said, the funding, you cannot do anything without money.
Yes.
Money has to be thrown into that sector. Like I said, I was recently part of something that happened in the FCT here. I was quite excited. But just going to the schools themselves, because they worked, with a private consultant, and it was beautiful. It was such a beautiful training. I was across the whole FCT, Abaji, and everywhere. But then I'm looking at the structures. That alone is a depressing place to go every day to show up and give your best. So a lot has to be done, even rehabilitating the school structures, the environment. The environment plays a huge role on someone's morale. So those people that show up every day to teach, they need an enabling environment. And also for those who are teaching, to make them feel the passion and all that, let them know how important their role is. All they would take is just constant, like for instance, during that training, they were so inspired, just hearing different people coming to speak to them, all the material that they were, and it didn't cost the whole world, but it made a whole difference. So those things have to be done consistently. And of course, salary. Just for 1 year, I was in the UK with my daughter, and she went to a public school where we paid nothing. We just paid for lunch, but the structure was beautiful. The teachers were paid decently, and she learned a whole lot. I didn't even have to consider putting her in a private school. It wasn't even a consideration. But today, anyone who's earning anything decent doesn't even want to put their child in a public school, because they're thinking, would they get the best? So it starts by making sure you're impacting these teachers, changing their environment, paying them properly, making sure they are well trained, and they are constantly being inspired and motivated to give it their best shot.
Government says it targets at the federal level now to get 4 million children back to the classrooms every year. Is that doable?
It is very doable, and it's been done in so many countries. I'll give you an example of Brazil. I think they had this feeding program, which was so successful, and in a year, they got millions of children back to school. What did they do? They focused on the areas that there was a lot of poverty, where children were not even eating at home. They started these feeding programs where they're giving them good nutrition, because that's really one of the main things in the feeding program. It's not for junk food. They're giving them proper nutrition, which is also very important. And they saw that there was an increase in enrollment within 1 year. Some fantastic figures. And then there was another country, I think Cambodia did something similar as well through feeding, and they had a huge increase. Another country, I've forgotten the country at this time, they did something that they were impacting the families. So they're like, if you allow your child to come to school, we will give you X amount of money. And it worked. People were bringing their children to school, because at the end of each quarter, based on the enrollment, they will get a certain sum of money. And these are, very poor people. So there are ways, they have been proven. Even here in Nigeria, I think Enugu State had a program that they did as well, or they're still doing it. I think it's tech school or something that has to do with tech, and it's working. Even our own feeding program has shown an increase in numbers. So if these things are done more consistently across the nation, every state is part of it. No state is left behind. No school is left behind. You will see a huge increase. And of course, if you partner with civil society.
A lot of people would say that what is happening in other climes and giving results does not give results
in Nigeria.
Yes. And that has been a concern over time, really. You gave the Brazilian example, for instance, and Brazil worked. We tried to copy even the Bolsa Familia. It didn't work here. It didn't give the desired results. So what will be the place of checks and balances and ensuring that it works?
I think we have to make sure that we allow our communities do what they need to do. I'm talking about our traditional rulers. At the very lowest level, everybody, it has to be something where they understand why this is important, where they see it as something that is for our benefit. I know of this NGO, I think they were doing something there in Borno and Bauchi, and it was for women. And what they had to do was to educate the men on why their women needed this. And once the men understood, they were like, the ones sending the women, go for this training. So in the same way, if the traditional rulers, everybody understands why the children need to go to school, they see the advantages, then it might work. But Nigeria is a very heterogeneous country. We have all sorts of cultures going on. If people understand that, look, this is, like you said, there's no country like Nigeria, to be honest. But even with all the beautiful colors and all the differences we have, things work. Getting that grassroots involvement is key. You can't just bring in fancy consultants without working with those at the lowest level. I'll go back to the training I did, with the FCT. They made sure, they called the consultant chalk work, but they made sure that ERC was involved, the local teachers were involved, everybody at every level was carried along, and that was why it was such a successful training. So you have to make sure that you're getting everyone matters, because it's a national problem. And you can't say, I'm sending my child to school, I'm sending my child to the best school in Abuja. You're kidding, because if the child next door or in the village or locality, which is, every town in Abuja has one small village, one lungu somewhere, they are not going to school. They're the ones that will come and harass your children, because a lot of them will fall into crime or be used by, political hooligans. So you need to make sure that everybody is carried along, and it's very possible.
Once upon a time in Nigeria, we had a president, IBB in fact,
yes,
who came up with a policy at that time to have a maximum of 4 children per family. And he had all the fantastic reasons to be able to cater to the needs of these children as parents, and for government to be able to plan adequately. And of course, it was also along the lines of where our population was exploding and had to be controlled to a certain level. The population has exploded already. And a lot of these out-of-school children are children of the poor, and with a lot of children. So really, at the parental level now, how do you control these numbers?
That's a huge task. And honestly, one of the reasons why that policy didn't work is that, how are you going to tell people, especially like we spoke about how Nigeria is culturally diverse. You're telling one man who knows that he's allowed to marry 4 wives, and each wife wants to have 4 children. How do you get him to say, okay, it's only one child per wife? How does that work? So it's very, very difficult, but it's something that we must continue to talk about, because honestly, it does make a difference. Apart from the home, for a mother, being able to cater mentally and emotionally for the needs of 4 children. So let's not even talk about the money. it takes a lot for a woman to do that. So having a manageable amount of children, it does make a whole lot of difference to the home, and it also helps okay, this is what I can afford, this is what I can plan for. It helps, it helps with projections, and that of course will have an effect on the educational system. Because when you think about it, in 2013, the out-of-school number was about 10 million or something like that. Now, this year it's about 18 million. So you can see that the number is increasing every year. There's an increment. Why? Because our population is expanding rapidly, and while some countries are looking for people, our own issues that we need to actually streamline in some ways. So honestly, I do hope some people can understand why. Nobody's trying to put
a control
on your family life or whatever. What you do is your business. But it is because I'm thinking of the country as, on a whole, as a land. How can we help this nation grow? How can we cater for those we have? How can the educational system, how can we plan and project when, we have this rapidly increasing population? So it's something that needs to be looked into by, our policymakers really to see, is this something that we want to revisit so we can actually help reduce this number? Because like you said, it is the poorest of the poor who are having these huge numbers and they cannot take care of these children, talk less of finding ways. Even though education is meant to be free at the primary level, there's still a lot of cost when you think about them having to leave the home, cost of transportation and all of that, and it does cost a lot.
How does this also affect their health and nutrition? Because I'm asking this question actually in recent time, we're having to deal with malnourished children. And these children are still the same children who are not in school, who are the children of the poor.
That's why those kind of school feeding programs are so important. People just see it as, they're just giving food. No, they're giving food that is properly produced with the right mix of nutrients, because like you said, a lot of these children they're eating the wrong food, they're malnourished, we're having a lot of cases of malnutrition, and there's a lot of ignorance as well, because people who are not well educated won't even know what to feed their children, plus poverty. If you're poor, you're feeding what is available, you're not thinking of nutrition. So it's really important that people understand that, look, it's beyond you just having these children. They need a lot for their wholesome growth. If you look at a child who is growing up in a very poor home, maybe he's 8, and you look at a child that's growing up somewhere in Asukoro, Abuja, and is 8. Look at their size. Look at
even the height difference.
The height difference. Look at their IQ. There's a big difference, and there's a reason why they're not being fed properly. There's even the living conditions. Maybe they're all in one bedroom, a family of 10. How are they coping? It's not healthy. No cross ventilation. The mental. How it affects a child mentally. Those are so many implications for children. So we need to look at all these things holistically, and I hope people can understand why it's important.
The Minister of Education recently said admission to tertiary institutions is now for 18 years above. And a lot of parents are saying, we have kids already at the gate. They're between 17 and 15. What happens to them? Wouldn't they end up being out-of-school children as well?
We're going to have a new, number. That is another place we're going to have that out-of-school children phenomena. And this one is not going to be just the children of the poor, but it's going to be children across board, because you're going to have children who are 15, 16, 17-year-olds who have nothing to do. And we all know an idle hand is the devil's, idle mind is the devil's workshop. So it's a big issue that we need to look into. And it all comes from this whole thing of not being consistent with our policy direction. We've had 6334, we've had 94. They keep on changing things. Each minister comes and they have good plans, but we need to sit down and make sure that we are consistent with our policies. And we're thinking, okay, we already have children who have gone through this system, who have come out early. In the UK, for instance, which is the truth, you cannot. It's the way that it's a very strict policy. The same thing in the US, they're quite strict about it. You cannot enter primary school until you're a certain age. You cannot enter secondary school until you're a certain age. It's not so here. So to come and just really introduce something, no matter how good your intentions are, it could cause a lot of schism in the system. So now parents have to get very creative and think of how they're going to help these children who will have that gap. They have to try and find ways to enroll them in activities, because the government, I don't know if they've thought it through. Like I said, it has a lot of good intentions. A lot of people are sending their kids to school too early, but it's something you need to start from the beginning. So what they would have done would have been a process that would have taken like 6 years to kick in, where you would have said, okay, from now on, children cannot be enrolled in primary school until they're a certain age, secondary school until they're a certain age, and then automatically the system corrects itself. Yes. But to just introduce it suddenly, you have a number of out-of-school children at that level. And like I said, it's going to cut across. The children of the rich, of everybody, are going to be affected. Because a lot of them have rushed through school. So that one, I leave it to the parents to figure it out. I'm sure they will, by God's grace.
I must sincerely thank you, Chioma, for your insights and for adding value to this conversation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
My name is Aldumi Ikori.
Keep watching The Policy with Leah.
It aims to provide policymakers an opportunity to explain their policies in a way that members of the public affected by those policies can understand and engage with those policies.
Keep watching The Policy with Leah.
And Simplify This is next. From there, we head to the markets. For more on rates from markets across the country, do well to log on to our sister website. It is www.marketnigertv.com. We have all the details there for you. And this episode and the previous ones, of course, as always, are available on YouTube on our channel. It is at Saban Media Services. Do well to subscribe live and leave us your comments, suggestions, of course, and questions, because we value them, to help serve you better. Until I come your way again, same time next week, be safe out there. And I say, God bless Nigeria.